Hello and welcome back to another session on cybersecurity. In this session, we'll be taking a look at an interesting attack called CSRF attack or the Cross-Site Request Forgery attack. First, we'll take a look at the demonstration. We'll understand how this attack works, and then we'll see the concepts behind this attack. So here I have this simple application which I've coded using PHP and MySQL DB. So what this application does is it asks for the username and password. So the user must log in. So let me enter my username and password, Satish and Satish, and then let's log in. So here I have logged in, and what is that this application offers to the user is the user can reset his password. Of course, the details of the password are stored in the MySQL database and it is present inside the MySQL database as shown here. So we have the username and password, which is an hash value. So we have usernames and passwords in the MySQL database. And now what we do is we'll reset the password for this user. So the new password is welcome, and we have to type in again. We have to confirm that new password. So welcome and welcome. So now when the user clicks on reset password, password has been updated for the user. So what it means is inside the database, the server-side script which I have written in PHP updates the password for Satish to welcome. So that's the meaning. And this is a very simple application. As you can see, I can log out. So once when I log out, the session gets destroyed. So this is the application, and we'll see how an hacker can attack and change the password for an user without the user knowing it. So for this, let's take up an example. So let's take up this example wherein I have username to be Satish and password to be welcome because I have changed it to welcome just now. So user is logged in. So the important criteria for this cross-site request forgery attack is the user should have logged in to his application. So the user is logged in, and this is the foremost important criteria for this attack to work. And once when the user has logged in, the hacker can send him a link through a mail. So let me show you an email wherein I have received a link from the hacker. So the user has already logged into the application, and now the user is just going to click on the link that the hacker has sent to him. So once when the user clicks on this link, so you can see the password has been reset successfully. So by just clicking on the link that the hacker has sent, we have reset the password for the user, and the user has no idea that his password has been reset. So once when the user logs out, and then he tries to log in, say Satish, and he enters his password welcome, the user is not able to log in because his password has been changed because he clicked on this link, and this link has enabled the resetting of the password. So what is the new password that the hacker has done is the hacker has changed his password for this user to the password hacker. So that's it. So how this has happened? This has happened by just clicking a link which the hacker has crafted, and he has sent that link to the user, and he just sent a phishing mail. Let's say he sent this link to the user in a phishing mail, and the user clicked on this link. So what happened was the password got reset, and the important criteria for this attack to work is the user should have logged into the application. So this is called a cross-site request forgery attack. But then there are various concepts that we should understand before even learning how this attack works. So what all things I have used here is I have used PHP as the server-side script, HTML and CSS and JavaScript for some validation in the client side. And I have used MySQL database. So here you're seeing the PHP MyAdmin interface, which is used for maintaining the data inside the database. So all these things I have done. And one more important thing is the user is provided with the option of logging in and logging out. So sessions are maintained within the script. So for any beginner who is trying to learn CSRF attack, you should have a knowledge on all these areas. But nothing to worry if you're a beginner, you have very limited knowledge on all these areas. I'll be leaving you the link for these lectures. Say, important thing is we should have an understanding of how sessions work in a server-side script, and we should have some understanding of how to access databases and work with it. So all these things, I'll be leaving some links for the lectures on these areas in the description below. Have a look at it. And if you have very limited time, you can just proceed. We'll take a look at a visualization. We'll understand how this attack works using this visualization. I hope that will help you. Let's go to the visualization now. So we'll understand all these concepts within visualization now. And we'll take a look at the definition for a CSRF attack, cross-site request forgery attack. As you can see here, this is a type of web security vulnerability where an attacker tricks a logged in user into unintentionally performing actions on a web application. So, as I told you, the first criteria for this attack to work is the user should have already logged in. And the next thing is when he gets a link from the hacker, when he clicks on it, it will lead to some kind of unintentional actions on a web application that the user may not be aware of. So we'll now take a look at certain visualizations, and we'll understand how this application worked and how the hacker made use of that weakness in the application. So here I have my browser which is running on my client. You can see that here. And the very first thing we'll do is we'll enter the URL for our application. Say you want to visit codespindle.com, you'll be entering the URL codespindle.com here. So I'll be entering the URL. I'll be making the request for this URL, employee login.php. So once when I make that request should be sent to a server, which will be hosting my server-side script. So this request is going through as an URL. So you're typing an URL. So there's an HTTP request going in the form of an URL to the server. And what is that we are requesting from the server is we are requesting this specific page, employee underscore login.php. And I also put up the header details here on the GET request we are making to the server. So here the host is localhost because everything is run on my laptop. And the file we are trying to access on the server is employee underscore login.php. So this is the request that is made to the server, and the server then responds with the code for that employee login page. So HTML code coming back as text. So that HTTP response is coming back, and the page gets rendered by the browser. So you're able to see we made a request and then the page got loaded and rendered by the browser. So you're able to see all these fields. The next thing is the user is going to enter the username. So let's say the user enters Satish and Satish to be the username and password. So once when the users enter this data, there should be again an HTTP request happening to the server to validate these credentials. So there is this specific URL that's getting transferred. See, there are two methods with respect to HTTP. There is one method called get, another method is called post. So these two HTTP methods are used when you're making a request to the server. See, normally post methods are used when you're transferring critical data like username and password to the servers. But here I have intentionally used the get method so that we understand the CSRF attack better. So what is the use of this get method is whatever values you are passing into the fields will be attached to the URL. So you see here, this is the username and this is the password and this will be visible. So this is actually not a secure way of transferring data to the server. So the important method that we'll use for transferring such kind of data is the post. But here, since I want to explain CSRF attack in a better way, and I want you to visualize how things are happening, I've used the get request. So get method, what is the use of get method? It will take the values that you're passing to the server, and then it's going to have that tagged or attached in the URL. So this is the URL request that goes to our server. And I've also put up the header information here. So this is an HTTP request. The host is the local host, And the server side script is also inside my employee login page. So that is the file we are requesting. And you see here the username we are passing is Satish and the password we are passing is Satish. So all these credentials are going to the server. So what server is going to do is it's going to pass these credentials and verify that against a MySQL database. So whether the username and password supplied by the user is actually the username and password present in the database. Once when the username credentials are valid, so it's going to create a session. So there is a file that's opened on the server, and this file is maintained. If you're running a XAMPP server, it's maintained inside the temp directory. You can see the session file. So what is this session file? A unique session ID is created. So you can see a unique session ID is created for this specific user, and that username is pushed inside this session file. So according to the script that's running here, I'm just pushing the username Satish into the session file. So who creates this session file? The server side script creates the session file, and it's maintained on the server inside the directory, and this contains a session ID. So you can see the session ID here, it's a big string, and there's also a username that's maintained inside the session file. So what is actually happening here is, so the user is supplying the username and password. We are verifying that with the database whether that is the correct username and password. And for that specific user, we are creating a session file. That is, the server is creating a session file, and it assigns a unique ID called the session ID. And it also puts that username. What is the username? Satish, that's coming in here, is pushed inside the session file. So once when this session file is created, the user credentials are validated, the response is sent back to the client. And what is the response containing? It's containing the welcome page code. So the user is valid, so we are diverting that user to the welcome page where he can reset his password. Plus, the server is also sending the session ID back to the client. So the session ID is received by the client, and then the welcome page code is received. So now you can see the client is able to see the welcome page, and then the browser renders the welcome page. So you can now see the browser has rendered the welcome page for the user, and then this session ID that is being sent by this specific server is actually stored. This is called a session cookie. This session ID is stored inside the browser's memory as a session cookie. So this session ID is stored. For this specific user, this session ID was created and sent, and this session ID is stored as a session cookie inside the browser's memory. So for an user who is logged in, we create a session and we assign a session ID, and that session ID is also sent back to the client, and the client maintains the session ID inside a session cookie in the browser's memory. So that's how we identify this specific user. I hope you are clear with this. The next step is uh, we have our welcome page, and we have our session cookie set. And now what the user does is he's going to enter the password, the new password, and then the confirm password. So two things. One is the new password, and then he's going to retype that password for confirmation. So once when he clicks on reset password, there will be an URL that is generated. So this URL, what it does is it contains it's nothing but an HTTP request that's going back to the server. And in this URL, since I'm using a GET request intentionally for transferring the data, you can see on the URL, we have the new password as welcome and confirm password to be welcome. I told you I'm using GET request so that we understand this attack far better. Normally, the URL, the method that's going to be used in the form is a post method. So what happens is here I am typing welcome and welcome. That is just tagged to the URL. You can see this is the new password and this is the confirm password. Not only that, when the client is sending the response back, what it does is it's going to attach the session ID. So I told you the session ID is first sent by the server after creating a session. It is maintained as a cookie inside the client. So this specific session ID should be transferred to the server for any further communication with the server. So once when the server gets the request, what it does is it verifies the session file. So you are just sending the session ID. The server is going to take that specific file mapping that session ID. So there is a match encountered here, and using that match it will identify the username to be Satish. That's how the server identifies the user, and using this username it's going to update the password. So what is the password you are sending? You can see here it's welcome and welcome. For which user, how it identified? It used the session file. Using the session ID, since there was a match, it was able to find the username to be Satish. For the user Satish, the password was updated as welcome and welcome. So once when the password is updated, the password reset message is sent back, and that's what you're able to see on the screen. So this is how actually this application works, and what is that you have to understand here is the entire communication happens between the server and then the client. It's based on this specific HTTP request we are crafting. So that is happening using this specific URL. So I use the get request so that we can see the parameters getting tagged within the URL. And the next important thing is once when the user has logged in, for any communication, this session ID is automatically tagged with that specific request and sent to the server. Once when the server gets the session ID, it compares the session ID with the session file, and then when there is a match, it identifies that specific user and it performs the actions requested by that specific client. So this is the scenario. I hope you are able to understand the scenario. If you're very new to all these concepts, just have a look at some of my lectures on session management and server-side scripting. I'll be leaving the link for those lectures in the description below so that you understand this further in depth. But I believe that this should work. Anyway, now let's take a look at how CSRF attack works. So we have understood how the application works, how session management works, what is the session file, what is the session cookie, and things like that. Now let us see how CSRF attack works. So here, as I told you, the very first important criteria for us for this CSRF attack to work is the user has logged in. So user has logged in, and so what happens when the user is logged in? It means a session file was created on the server, and then the session ID was established on the client using a session cookie. So this is ready. So user is logged in, session cookie is established, the server has created a session file, and it has logged in the username. So now what happens is the hacker sends a link. You see the hacker has crafted a link wherein he is sending name to be Satish and password to be hacker123. So you can have anything here, hacker or hacker123. So the link is sent to you. So when you click on this link, what happens is it goes as a request from your client, from your device. So once when it is going as a request to the server, the session ID which was already established gets tagged to the request. So here you're clicking on the hacker's link. So hacker is sending this link. What happens is along with that request, your session ID gets tagged and it is sent to the server because you are clicking that link and it is initiated from your browser. So now what happens is the server gets the session ID, and it has already established the session, so it knows that there is a session ID match. So it identifies the user to be Satish. You're just clicking on the link. Since your session ID is tagged, the server is able to identify the user as Satish. And then what it does is, using this specific username, it performs an update for the password. So what is the password update we are requesting here is hacker123 and hacker123. So the hacker has changed, is requesting for a password change wherein he has crafted this URL such a way that for this user Satish, change the password to hacker123. Since you have clicked on this link and server has already established a session, it's able to identify you as Satish and it updates the password as hacker123 for the user Satish, and then the request comes back as OK. And once when the updation is done, the password reset message is sent back to the user, and the password has been reset. So the user is not aware of what exactly the password has been reset to because the hacker has crafted this URL. The only thing the user has done is he has clicked on this link and the server has executed this operation because it was able to get the session ID from the request. So this kind of a thing is called a cross-site request forgery attack. I hope you are able to follow this. I would like to go to the ways on how we can prevent it and also show you certain demonstrations on how exactly this specific session file is created on XAMPP server and how the session cookie is established on the um, browser side. So before even going into this, let's take a look at some of the ways on how to prevent this. User interaction for sensitive actions. Say if there is a need for change of password or transfer of funds, wherein the operations are critical, we'll again ask the user to enter his username and password. We'll maybe send an OTP. We'll again ask the user to confirm that he is the one who is performing this action. The another way to prevent this is servers generating a unique secret token for each and every request that for each and every user session or each request that it makes. So for every session, for every request, we are going to have some unique tokens that are generated by the user, which obviously the hacker is not going to know. And the server will verify the presence of these unique tokens and validity before processing the action. So again, here we are not going to allow any cross-site requests. So this is again the attribute for cookies, which will instruct the browser not to send the cookie with cross-site requests. So that is another action that we can take. Double submit the cookies. So the server sets some random value in a cookie and the web application expects this value to be included as an hidden field in state changing forms. The server verifies if both values match. So again, I was talking to you about session cookies, right? So inside the cookie, we're going to have some random value in that cookie. And every time the application, which is going to change state in its form, will be sending this random value in a hidden field. And the server is going to verify whether both the values match. So these are some kind of strategies that we can use for preventing such kind of cross-site request forgery attacks. So we can also verify whether the request originated from the application's own domain. So this is also another verification that we can perform to prevent CSRF attack. So one of the key things is if you are interested in preventing CSRF attack, the best thing is when you are performing certain critical actions, it is better to ask for the user to again authenticate using his username, password, or an OTP. You can go with any kinds of such authentication to prevent these attacks. I hope I was clear on these attacks. Now let us take a look at where these session files and how the session cookie is established in the browser. Let's take a look at that demo now. So let me go back to my application, and here, so what is that we are going to see here is we are going to take a look at the dev tools, and what we'll do here is we'll go to network and we'll start. So here the very first thing is a get request happening. So we are requesting this URL employee login.php. So you can see that's the URL, and the status is the return status is OK. So the server returns with a 200. That's an OK. So we're able to see this page. Server has written the code for this page. Now let us enter the username to be Satish and password to be hacker. So let's log in. So once when you log in, you see there's a request that's going back to the server. So this is the request. You can see username is Satish and password to be hacker. And you can very well see the get request happening here. So this is what I was telling you. We are requesting the server side file, and what is that data we are sending is username to be Satish and password to be hacker. And once when this data is sent to the server using this URL, you can see the server verifies the credentials, username to be Satish and hacker from the database. And once when the credentials are valid, the user is logged in. So at this stage, once when the user is logged in, a session is created. So I am running XAMPP server. We have Apache and MySQL server running in, which is listening in port number 80 and 3306. So to see the session file created on the server, you can go to the XAMPP folder on the C drive, and inside the XAMPP folder, there's a temp folder. So inside the temp folder, you can see there's a session file that has been created. So this is the session file with the unique session ID, and this session ID is also communicated to the client. So where is our client? So here is our client, and this client is going to maintain the session ID somewhere. So you want to see where the session cookie is maintained, you go to storage and then you click on cookies. And then when you click on this specific cookie, you see the session ID is maintained on the browser's memory. So you have a session ID which is maintained on the server's folder, and this session ID is exactly the same that is maintained on the browser's memory. So this is called the session cookie. So this session cookie will be used for further communication with the server on further requests from the client. So this is how sessions are managed. Say when I log out, that specific session file will be removed from the server. So you had two session files. One of the session file got removed from the server, and the same thing happens with the client too. So that's it for this session. I hope you had a very good understanding of what CSRF attack is, and you understood how sessions are managed, how session cookies are established, what is a session file, how we do the entire thing, and how an hacker understands your application, crafts an URL, sends it to you, and when you click on it, the most important criteria is you should have logged into your application. So once when you're logged into your application and you click on that link, he is going to perform whatever actions that he wants to perform on your application. We have looked at certain ways to prevent it. One of the important ways is whenever you're performing very critical actions on your web application, always have um, an authentication again. So that will help you, that will save you from a lot of damage that the hackers can do. That's it for now. I hope you all enjoyed this session. If you have any questions, you can leave those questions in the comments below. I'll be having a look at it. I'll be catching you up with another interesting session soon. Take care.